Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the second webinar in our series from Allstream and Cisco, The Future of Work 360. I'm Don Thorson, North America's UC Product Manager for Allstream, and today's webinar is The Great Retention, with two amazing guest speakers from Cisco, Justin Fields and Mark Miller. A few notes before we get started. Please scan the QR code that you see on the screen to access our WebEx Slido polling app. So join the conversation, scan the app, it's very simple. If you don't have a QR code app on your phone, you can use your camera to scan it. So it'll be fun, so go ahead and scan that QR code. So some of the questions that we will be asking that you'll see in the Slido app are completely anonymous, so your name won't appear with it anywhere. So feel free to answer as you will, without any constraint that your name is going to be retained in any way. So also, this webinar will be recorded and available on demand after today through allstream.com. At the end of the webinar, we'll have time for Q&A, but feel free to ask any questions as we go through the presentations, and we'll take those at the time. So if you look at your client, you'll see that the Q&A section is in the bottom right-hand corner of the WebEx application. So we'll answer them throughout the webinar. So enough from me. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mark Miller from Cisco. Mark, take it away.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Mark Miller from Cisco. Just as a quick introduction, I work in Cisco's Global Collaboration Technology Group. I'm a director in the Center of Excellence and lead our work around future of work and hybrid work, that practice. And my job, really interesting. I divide my time equally around three areas: discussions with customers around their future work and hybrid work initiatives. Work a lot with our product management and engineering teams, making sure we're innovating in the right ways to support all of you. And then lastly, I work with Cisco's own IT and real estate teams around the development of our future of work and hybrid work strategy. So, Justin?
Mark, thank you so much. Again, my name is Justin Fields, and I'm a business development manager here at Cisco on the cross architecture team for the Americas Partner Organization. That's a mouthful. I actually come with 12 years of experience on the partner side, focused on selling cross architecture solutions. Today, we're going to dig into the Great Resignation, and we're going to look at how organizations are combating it using technology, and how we turn the Great Resignation into the Great Retention. If you haven't done so already, to Don's point, scan the QR code, and we're going to see how this group compares to some of the averages later on in the presentation. So first, let's start by defining the Great Resignation. So when we talk about the Great Retention, we need to talk about the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is also known as the Big Quit, or in China, it's known as Tang Ping. It's an economic trend in which employees are voluntarily resigning from their job en masse. Some say that the trend has been going on for some time, but the official start was at the beginning of 2021. It's also been stated that the trend took a major swing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, with everyone changing their lifestyles and thinking they can do it on single incomes or other factors. Let's view some of the statistics surrounding the Great Resignation. We start by looking at what executives of companies are saying. 88% stated that they're experiencing higher turnover than normal. Now, this is a US statistic versus a North American statistic. However, in Canada, the trend is actually picking up right now. There was a different level of government relief provided by the Canadian government versus the US government, which some believe delayed the shift. However, some of the key factors of why individuals are leaving are ringing true regardless of where you are. Next, in North America, we saw an average of 3.95 million workers quit each month in 2021. Yes, in each month. That's a ton of jobs that span across a variety of industries. These industries include education, air travel, healthcare took a major hit, the hospitality industry, as an example, food services, retail, grocery, food chains, transportation, and the trucking industry. On that note, the American Trucking Association stated that they are short staffed by roughly 80,000 drivers. Lastly, manufacturing was one of the largest industries hit, with nearly 60% of workers quitting from the pre-pandemic numbers to late 2021. Next, we look at the work shortage, which is driven by that 3.95 million people quitting each month from the previous slide. It's going to have this huge negative impact on business. And we're seeing this today. I mentioned the retail industry taking a significant hit. Thus, retail outlets are changing their hours and days open because they don't have the staff. Personally, I used to get my haircut on Sundays. It was the best day for me. Now, I have kids, they have activities and whatnot. Everyone's busy, but now they're closed on Sundays due to the lack of staff. If anyone out here on this call today is in the market for a new car, the manufacturing shortage, that led to the chip shortage, that leads to the driver and transportation shortage, it leads to low supply and high demand. Even something like this impacts the travel industry with the lack of rental cars out there. The list goes on, and this disruption will continue, and CEOs can see it coming. 73% of them anticipating work shortage will disrupt their business over the next 12 months. Next, we look at those that are working either remote or hybrid. We're conducting 50% more video meetings since the beginning of the pandemic. And if you actually think about it, look at us on this webinar right here, right now, as a great example. This is an event that could have been in person, which, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have mind flying somewhere to do this session today, but it's now done via WebEx. How many of these are we doing a day, a week, a month? And then lastly, we look at the percentage of employees that said they're looking for a new job. Let's compare this as a result of our Slido poll. So right now, 81%. And again, if you haven't done so, the code is up here. Please join the conversation here, completely anonymous, right? The poll is active. So go ahead and scan that and you can watch it change real time. But we can see here 82% of the individuals, considered it. Maybe 11% and no 7%. So we found that 65% of employees said that they're looking for a new job for one reason or another. More flexibility, or they can work in a different state. Maybe it's more pay. The why is very important, and it gives us the data points so that we can counter it. Now, what does all of this mean? It means that there are a ton of open positions with not enough people to fill them. It means higher turnover with the inability to backfill. It means that organizations have to shift their operating hours, and it means that we're all sitting in front of our screens like we're doing today for extended periods of time. Now, everything that I referenced had to do with the business or the corporate side of the impact of the Great Resignation. But let's shift our focus to the employee side and look at the key factors there. So one of the items that ranks high on the list is frustration with technology, slow performance, poor application experience, inadequate home office setup. I remember chatting with my neighbor early in the pandemic, and he told me that they would never work from home. They built this multi-billion-dollar campus here in the Rocky Mountain region for their employees. Yet I do these sessions and I look out the window and he's still working from home. And you think about the shift. My neighbor works for a financial planning company, and they look at stock tickers all day. And my neighbor even mentioned that His work setup had like 4 different monitors with a high-powered desktop. The company wasn't willing to let these assets just walk out the door, but could you imagine if he didn't have that technology? Next, we look at lack of control. Because we are remote, we don't have a say. We look at low pay, too much work, lack of recognition, lack of work-life balance as an example. I'm guilty of this. Though on the work-life balance piece, I feel like I'm logged in from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. I hear the WebEx Teams ding or an email come through or my cell phone buzzes, and I'm inclined to go see what it was because my office is my home office and it's right here. It's convenient. There was a preconceived notion that work is done from 9 to 5 with no flexibility. In some industries, this is true, like call centers, for example. Whereas other industries, it just matters that the job gets done. Next, employees are not engaged, right? They're on an island. Now, I'm relatively new to Cisco. I'm almost to that 9-month mark. And one of my biggest fears was team engagement, being a part of the culture. And last but not least, physically having to drive somewhere is a significant frustration. I sat in traffic for the first time a few weeks ago. And I was thinking, actually, what a complete waste of time of me sitting in traffic. Again, these are just a few of the factors from the employee side. I guarantee there's dozens more. So if we had to sum up everything, employees expect flexibility. They want the ability to collaborate effectively. And all of this is now table stakes, right? It's something that is just automatically assumed. I read an article, I think as recent as last week, where it stated that flexibility is expected today to most individuals, just like a 401k is expected. And if anyone remembers in the early 80s when organization moved away from pensions to 401ks, it was a major shift, right? Huge shift back then. And we're seeing that same transition today with flexibility. It's just expected. So flexibility means more than just technology, but technology plays a significant role. Setting up clear work-life boundaries and creating a more level playing field, we want to ensure that people at home are not overlooked for stretch assignments or promotion opportunities. Outdated success metrics, like how many hours one puts in, it needs to be refocused on results and impact. It's important for companies to encourage employees to take breaks and establish a regular working rhythm, as well as to remind them that they are valued for their ability to meet goals and exceed expectations, wherever they may be. I personally enjoy the fact that in the middle of the day, I can go walk my dog with no repercussion. Work is about what you do, not where you are, right? So creating a hybrid work environment, accept this shift in the market, and let's leverage technology to allow this. Next, we look at our ability to collaborate. Now, there's countless and countless tools out there that give us the ability to effectively collaborate. Again, we're using WebEx Event Center today. Our tools also need to be able to go where we are or go where we're going, whether it be at home or in the office or at a coffee shop. We need to embrace technology for all of these things that we do in person: training, team building, happy hours, etc. I mentioned earlier that I'm new to Cisco. And when I was exploring the job market in early 2021, which means, yes, I was actually a part of the statistics identified here today, I wanted to be a part of a culture that embraced my skill set. And I wanted to be a part of a culture that I believed in. And I knew that when I was interviewing that my boss and my peers were, for the most part, on the East Coast, and I'm in the Rocky Mountain region. It was a bit nerve-wracking. And now I'm 9 months into it. I am completely engulfed in the culture. I've done countless of training sessions, team meetings, team building activities that make me feel a part of the culture. In fact, our next team building event is a hot sauce sampling event. Everyone is getting shipped a sample set of spicy sauces, and I'll admit, it's probably better that we're doing it via WebEx so that hopefully people won't see me sweat, right? So there are advantages of leveraging technology there. So as we've seen throughout this portion of today's presentation, technology can be frustrating to employees, right? It can create friction and it can prohibit employees from being productive. The good news is that technology can also be a big part of the solution. So, what can we do to retain employees? First and foremost, pick the right tools that give your employees the ability to be flexible and work from anywhere. We want to change the norm of what was once done in person. Let's avoid being big brother. We know that there's technology out there that can watch every single keystroke or everything that we're doing. Let's get away from screen time and move towards results driven performance. And always remember, work is about what you do, not where you are. And let's let technology do the heavy lifting and make your employees feel supported. That was a ton of talking by me. I'm now going to grab a quick drink of water and pass things back over to Don for any questions the audience may have.
Thanks, Justin, for that. We do have a question here. When you spoke about, let's see here. Sorry, I just lost my place. When you spoke about providing the right tools that are flexible in requirements like a 401k, using that example, how do I advocate for my organization to put these tools into practice, into place?
Well, that's a great question. And I'll give my simplistic answer is that we need to advocate for the right tools that allow us to collaborate effectively. And whether I'm remote on my mobile device or if I'm in front of my computer, there's obviously a huge demand for effective collaboration, right? So it's articulating the why, right? I'd reference a book from Simon Sinek, Start with Why. Here's why we need to explore these types of tools within my organization so that I can work from anywhere, right? So,
right. I think that's a great point. Starting with why. Why should I work from home? What's the benefit to the company, right? I mean, just like the example that you were using, they're getting more bang for their buck with you working, longer hours. So, you do have that work from home mentality, and where the tools make all the difference, that you can, you be more productive because of you're not spending time commuting or, doing other activities such as that. So, yeah, so let me see here. But there's a lot of people that are looking to, to move back into the office as the pandemic eases, So, any suggestions on how to change their mind for a more hybrid approach?
I think from my perspective, especially obviously with the series that Allstream's doing, the future of work in a hybrid environment, I think that's the key there is that you look at the great resignation is that people are quitting if they have to go back to the office. So you have to be able to balance that as an organization and provide the right tools and flexibility, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that allows for that. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the key there.
Yeah, and I know from personal experience, my daughter was in that situation herself when they went back to the office and didn't feel comfortable in that environment, and got actually a better job that's 100% work from home. And so I've I've seen it happen firsthand. So that's great. So is it time now to move on to Mark, I think? So Mark will.
Thank you, Don. As I get my slides up, I'm going to offer some insights on that last question, though, because I think it's a great question. One of the things we're starting to think about in this notion of return to office, right, is what is the purpose of the physical office? And we really start to think of it as the office is the new offsite amenity. When you think about it, that the office is now a place you go when you need it, not necessarily all the time in this world of hybrid work. And it changes the expectation around what the office has to possess. This idea that the office needs to offer something that I can't get working remotely. Otherwise, guess what's going to happen? People will tend to still work remotely. And I think technology plays an important role there, Don. But I think also this notion of programs and amenities and other things also. And we're going to kind of talk about this in this next segment. As I said, my name is Mark Miller. I work in Cisco's collaboration group and lead a team in the Center of Excellence around hybrid work. This is not anything new to me. Right? I've been looking at the workplace for I think the last 8.5 or 9 years. The workplace has been going through a time of a profound change for years, right? We could look back historically and see that as well, 100 years ago. But the reality is the pace of change that we've seen in the last 10 years and the pace of change we've seen in the last uh, 2 years, or for those of you playing the home version of this pandemic game, the 707 days or what I think, whatever it is, Justin, that we got the notice here at Cisco that said we're going to take a short 2-week pause from being in the office, right? I think it's been a bit longer than that. The reality is that the workplace continues to change and will continue to evolve. When we think about this, and my job is a lot of looking around corners and seeing what's sort of next around the idea of work and the future of work. And this idea of the Great Resignation and the pandemic all seems to get muddled together in one big topic. But the reality is we saw this Great Resignation phenomena 10 years ago, and you didn't have to look far. All you had to do was look historically back in time around the birth rates and realize that we had an inflection point about 65 years ago, which corresponds to, very interesting, the general age when people think about leaving the workforce, right? And you see a massive drop off of birth rate. And you realize at that point that, wow, we could have a problem in the future here around sourcing of talent. And I think that's what we're hitting here. So that became the fuel to this problem. The pandemic became the spark. That really is what set people off. And, I'm not sure the pandemic can be accused of being the catalyst for all this. I think the Great Resignation was probably going to happen, but I think it was going to happen over a much longer period of time. And probably starting 2 to 3 years in the future. I think with what's going on now, it's backed itself up. People have reprioritized, as Justin talked about, this notion of work-life balance. I think obviously the inflated financial markets have caused people to think, hey, I can punch my ticket a bit sooner. And for other people, they've just said, look, I just want to make life simpler. The old adage is, as I get older, life's supposed to get simpler. And that's what's driving a lot of this conversation right now. When we think about that, we realize that the workplace needs to be very, very different, right? When we think about it, when we think about work needs to be obviously much more flexible. And we need to think about the workforce in a much more flexible manner. I live here in the northeast part of the U.S., somewhat called the insurance belt here in Connecticut. We can even see it in my neighborhood, right? We're seeing all sorts of different social contracts appearing between the companies or in my neck of the woods with their employees. We're seeing a lot of shortened work weeks. We're seeing a lot of job sharing. We're even seeing one company that has a new program where they're taking people who are retired and putting them in a job bank to be able to be brought back into the company as needed, as almost a dedicated contingent workforce. Now, what are the technology implications of that? Am I buying a license for software for each one of those people? Am I assigning them a desk? Am I giving them a laptop to work on? Lots and lots of things have to be worked out, but incredibly dynamic. The second is we need to be much more inclusive in our work arrangements, right? When we think about talent, we are going to have to stretch our boundaries how we think about talent, and we are no longer going to be able to just source talent within certain geographic areas. And this idea that the workplace becomes much more dispersed is an important part of this equation. And as technology leaders, and people leaders, we need to understand that. Third, with that more dispersed workforce, we have to focus on making sure the enterprise stays secure. If I'm having a workforce that is largely dispersed and could include lots of people that don't have fixed relationships with me, i.e. contingent workers, part-time workers, flexible workers, whatever you want to call micro workers, whatever you want to call them, the reality is security plays an incredibly important role to make sure that I protect the assets of my enterprise. I need to be supportive right? I think that's another attribute that's important, and especially supportive of our folks that are early in career and new hires. And I think this is something that's not really recognized and being talked about quite as much as it should be right now. This idea that with this great resignation, with this hot job market, what we're going to have is a lot of turnover. And the thing I need to manage in turnover is this notion of time to competency, meaning how quickly are people productive when they are hired. It can't take a year to make somebody useful if their tenure is only going to be 16 or 18 months. Then I'm only going to get about 6 months of useful time out of that. We need to make sure that we create work environments that are supportive to get people competent in a much shorter period of time. I think technology plays a really, really interesting role in making that happen.
Hey, Mark,
And lastly,
we have
this
a question.
environment needs to be managed.
Mark, we have
Right,
a
it needs to
question
be
that kind
managed
of
very
dovetails
differently.
into that.
What's up?
We have a question that kind of dovetails
Yeah.
into what you just said there, if I can interrupt for a second.
Yeah, certainly.
What is the trade-off with staff on other components of the remote work component? Internet speeds, proper workspace, computer monitors, bring your own device, insurance, etc. I'm for the flexibility, but I've seen the above issues as well as a significant loss of culture. And I think that's an important
Oh,
part.
that is a fantastic question, right?
Yep.
With a more dispersed workforce, you have to consciously think about managing culture, right? And in preserving culture in these environments. It just doesn't happen by circumstance. When people are all together, culture's easy. Now I'll go to my support. I just talked about supportive. Think about that in the spirit of a new hire, right? What are the three pieces of currency every employee has with their company? Knowledge of how to get their job done, their network, and their understanding of reputation capital. Reputation capital being who are people that I can turn to in times of need. Those are three bits of currency that are earned by actually being together. Very difficult, Don, to do that when you're remote, right? So, we have to manage those situations with a much more dispersed workforce. And we'll talk about this in a minute. You talked about internet speeds and equipment and things like this. When we at Cisco look at our office, when we look at our real estate portfolio, it's interesting now how that has changed. First, we have about 18 million square feet of office real estate, about 400 buildings. We don't talk about the 400 buildings anymore. We talk about the 400 buildings and the 70,000 offices of one. That's the extension of our real estate portfolio. We need to manage the home office and the experience and the service and the level of quality to that edge of our business. And technology is catching up to allow that. I think also the really interesting thing that's happened at Cisco, and I'm starting to see in a lot of other companies as well, is facilities, which was typically an operations function for years, Don, is now Cisco is now under our HR, or People and Communities team. And I'm seeing that happen increasingly more often. Why is that? Because we look at real estate as an experience. And now we have one team that manages the experience of employees from the time they hire to the time they leave and everything in between. So, and that goes to that culture too. So any comments you want to add on that? I mean,
No, and actually another question came in right after that. It's leaders adapted quickly when we were forced to work from home, as a lot of companies did. As that changes and the leadership wants to help encourage to go to a hybrid work model, it seems that many of our senior leaders are choosing to come back, which sends a mixed message to our employees. So management's going back to the office, but employees are.
Don, I would ask that person that asked that question, were you spying in on my last call that I had before joining this webinar? Because I was exactly talking about that we were opening up an office in New York, and the leader of that office says to me, look, I plan on being there a lot, but I don't want that to be perceived as you have to be there to be work. This notion of FOMO, fear of missing out, that's a lot what's driving this, right? So, look, leadership is going to play a huge role in making this hybrid work, whatever that is. And the other thing I'll share with everybody, and this is absolutely obvious for all of you, right? No two hybrid environments are going to be the same. All Streams is going to be different than Cisco. It's going to be different than every other person that what they experience on this call. The experiences may be very different at a team level. And in fact, what we're doing at Cisco is we're not forcing a decision that says everybody needs to pick 2 days to be in the office. What we're doing is we're leaving it up to the individual teams to decide how they want to work. And for some teams, that may be 4 days a week. For some teams, that may be no days a week. Other teams, it may be, hey, let's all try to be here on Wednesday to make sure we work together, right? The fact is, the workplace is going to be a destination of collaboration, learning, and sharing. And nobody's going to say, I went to the office and I got a lot of work done today. That's generally not what the office is going to be for, right? The office is going to be for interaction, for bonding, to drive engagement, to be around others. And I'll show you pictures of our Cisco offices. They're a little farther in the deck here that will show you that's how we're designing space specifically around that. So.
Yeah, and it seems to be a common theme in our audience. This question. This is the third one I've seen, and it's a lot of the employees, they view their status and value to the company. It's the old corner office, right? I mean, if you have the corner office, and the culture, how does that?
Yeah.
Like you said, you're missing out. So you can see that this is top of mind with a lot of our audience today.
Before I worked at Cisco, early in my career, I worked for a large insurance company here in Connecticut, 168-year-old heritage, right? And your level of your stature was decided on how high the wall was, whether you had a door, and the uber one if you had your own restroom. Then you knew you were really there, right? Yeah. I mean, so literally was defined by the size of the wall. And you're in the amount of space. That happens quite a bit in pharma too, believe it or not. Researchers, it happens a lot in education as well. There are certain industries where this is really prominent. That is all going to change, right? And we're building an office right now in Atlanta at Cisco for a couple of our executives. Actually, there's 9 EVP and SVPs and above. Every one of them has come to us and says, I don't want an office. Give me a space to work in. And if you assure me that I'm going to have a place to work, I don't necessarily need to have an office piece. The reality is I'm only going to be there probably 30% of the time anyway. So, this is how these worlds are changing. And I think we're all going to model the right behaviors. And I'm sure there's enough eye rolling going on in the webinar of people saying that would never work in my company. It's going to happen over time, right? Let's totally be our experiences, mileage may vary is the line, right? So, moving on, right? I mean, I think about this notion of this idea of the Great Resignation and hybrid work and the pandemic and all sort of bundling together, right? And I think the destination we're going to get to is this idea around hybrid work. And the running joke around here is, early in my career, Don, I think we're sort of contemporaries here. Everybody focused on this notion of e-business. Everybody, that was all people talked about. You know what we call e-business now? Business. It's one and the same, right? I think hybrid work is that we're all focused on hybrid work now. Hybrid work 5 years from now is just going to be work. It's just going to be how people are going to do things. But I think we have to prepare for that. And I think there's sort of 4 steps to this hybrid workplace journey. I think obviously we talked a bit, and we're going to spend a little bit more time here. We've got to prepare our physical environments for this return, right? And we're going to build these environments in mind of the long-term implications of an increasingly challenged talent pool and how we're going to use space very, very differently to ensure that people stay connected and engaged. I think the workforce is going to continue, as I said, to be much more dispersed. And with that, remote work is going to take off. I think the decisions that we made 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, people are going to need to revisit them, right? And we're going to need to think about how we make remote work sustainable. Third, with a more dispersed workforce done, the reality is that we are going to need to simplify and enhance how work gets done. Value chains are going to break. Business processes that assumed people were all together are going to bust, and we're going to need to break those down if we haven't already, and make sure they're going to be we're going to be able to meet the commitments that we make to our customers and our employees and our stakeholders. And lastly, we're going to have to find new ways to manage people, spaces, and technology very, very different, because those are the 3 most expensive things we spend money on right now, every company, and 3 things that have to be managed. Let's talk about updating your office spaces. I think there's a number of things, and as I said, I'm involved in a lot of big office remodeling projects right now, sort of setting the tone of how we're building those spaces. And I think there's a couple of things that always sort of come up here. The workplace is going to have to work a lot harder to earn the trust and respect of employees, as I said before. So I'm going to need to offer experiences inside the workplace that are different than people can get at home, or guess what? They're probably not going to be real excited to make that commute in. We can obviously look to force people. That has implications too, right, Justin? If you're forced to go into the office, you may choose to do something else and find a company, as Don, you said, your daughter, who found another opportunity that allowed her to work remotely, right? But when we think about things, we are heavy in the realization that 90% of meetings that people are going to join are going to have somebody working remotely. We need to video enable every bit of collaboration space to ensure our people stay connected. New York office I'm building right now, old office, 16 bookable meeting rooms. New office, 16 bookable meeting rooms, 75 other video-enabled collaboration spaces. Collaboration everywhere. 20% of the video estate out in the open plan. I'm trying to make collaboration not a scheduled activity. It doesn't just happen, Don, between 10 and 11, right? It's going to happen throughout the course of the day. What space is going to be there? Individual space is largely going to be unassigned. Thus, we're going to have to find new ways for people to manage and use that. This notion of hot desking and hoteling, we'll talk about that in a bit. Really, really important. There's some subtle differences there. We need to expand the use of digital signage, and more importantly, we need to find a new digital information strategy to keep people connected and engaged. And lastly, we need to provide tools to make it easier for people to leverage workplace assets. An example of that, right? I mean, places for people to concentrate, places for people to collaborate. There's these open, this is New York City, I was just there yesterday. Places for people to learn, and very importantly, places for people to socialize. Really, really important. This office in New York, 70% dedicated to those three attributes: collaboration, learning, and socializing. It went from 150 assigned desks and 40 manager offices to 50 individual workstations, all shared. People are going to come to the office to be around others. And as I said, we're going to give them tools to help them better manage this. This is a new application that we're building right now at Cisco. They'll be out to the market in the next quarter, right? How do I use all the sensing data coming in from the workplace? How do I help people understand what spaces are available? How do I understand the air quality? We're pulling all that from our collaboration devices, believe it or not. You know what? We're aggregating all this information to give people more insights on how best to use the workplace environment. Secondary, we need to make remote work sustainable. I talked about that before. And understanding that this notion of our employees who are working remote, there's not one thing as a remote employee. I'm going to have people that are fully remote. I'm going to have people that are on the go, and I'm going to have a lot of people that are hybrid. Fully remote people, I need to focus on that, optimizing that at-home experience. People that are hybrid, I need you to give you the agility to move back and forth. And most importantly, on those people that are frontline out in front of customers, partners, out in the field, I need to give them the tools to make sure they're adaptable to whatever situation they're in. There's a lot going on here. Whether it's enabling employees with the right tech, ensuring they have all the tools and software to make sure they stay connected, productive, engaged is important. Removing the obstacles of working remotely. Noise cancellation, removing background noise. Don, we've seen a lot of virtual backgrounds. All that technology was spun up at the beginning of the pandemic to hide people's bedrooms that they were working at, right? And worry about the barking dog. And lastly, providing inclusivity and digital equality for all remote workers. We need to make sure those that are working remotely have the same access to people, information, and opportunity, right? And I think technology, especially collaboration technology, makes that important. And we've actually seen this, right? We've seen a ton of innovation over the course of the pandemic. Cisco, 800 new features within our WebEx platform through the course of the pandemic, right? Built specifically around this rapid increase of people working remotely. And as I said, things like audience engagement, we use Slido today. events management. We're on an events bridge right now, allows us all to get together. This notion of an assistant, a voice assistant, to make it easier to join meetings. All these things have come out of just the necessity of more people working remotely. Third area, we need to simplify and enhance how work gets done. As I said before, the fact is that workflows are going to break during with much more people being remote. And with that, we need to make sure that we are optimizing the number of tools that people are working with, right? We can't just give them a bunch of point solutions. They've got to have a really integrated platform that really allows them to be functional. We need to have continuity and consistency across workloads. They can't be jumping from tool to tool. As I said before, we need to worry about workflows and the fact that they're going to need to be rebuilt many times with collaboration embedded within them. And then we need to add collaboration capabilities to the other tools we work. If we're Salesforce users or ServiceNow or SAP or Oracle, we've got to be able to embed collaboration capabilities into those tools to ensure that we streamline and take the friction out of that. It really, at the end of the day, Don, it's wherever people work, you want to have a great experience. You don't want to be disenfranchised based on the fact that I'm working at home or working on the road. I need to offer the right experience. And most importantly, I need to provide tools to people that neither overserve nor underserve. Let's talk about that. This notion of neither overserving nor underserving. Both are bad things. Too much technology is just as bad as too little technology. It's about precision. And to do that, I highly recommend people think about doing personas and journey mapping. Segment your employees and your workforce, understand they have different needs, and work very hard to make sure you're optimizing each of their experiences. And lastly, managing people, spaces, and technology. As I said before, those are the three most expensive assets that people have, right? That's what you spend your money on. Being able to manage it proactively is really important. And whether it's giving IT access to information for visibility and management around technology end to end, not just in the office, all the way down out to the last mile out to your house. That's incredibly important. Being able to have rich information on how people are using our physical or built environments. All right, really, really important. This idea that now facilities can potentially use that information to make decisions in the future on how to build space. Compliance and reporting, getting understanding of how people adopt technology and helping individuals drive their own effectiveness. And there's a lot of great things coming out around that. There's a lot of great tools around analytics that are really driving this world. Pre-Cisco, I spent 25 years in the industry building contact centers. I can never run a contact center without analytics. I wonder how we run a workplace without analytics, around meaningful analytics. And once again, that's around technology, but it's all around things like space occupancy, understanding how people are using space, understanding the experience they have in the space, including environmentals, understanding if they're booking meetings and not showing up. Little known fact at Cisco pre-pandemic, 40% of our meeting room bookings went unused. Why was that? Dug into it a little longer. What we found interesting was that the farther in advance you made a booking for a room, the less likely you were to show up. In fact, if you booked a meeting room more than 7 days in advance of a meeting, there was less than 10% chance you actually showed up for it. That's a drain on your business. That's a significant drain on the business. Being able to understand those patterns and correct them, really, really important. And obviously helping people understand how to manage work-life balance, right? We're all pressured with many demands, but putting tools in the hands of people to help them manage their day. Some great new insights that we're building into our platform, and I'm sure will be sort of industry standard in a few years. But the reality is to help people realize, how much time are they spending focus? How much time are they spending in meetings? How often do they show up to a meeting late? Are they multitasking in a meeting? It's all around understanding your effectiveness as an employee, not to provide to your manager. This is all information personal to you. Justin and I see it every day, right? We understand how we're working, and it's helped you to be better at what you do. So, and obviously, lastly, technology adoption. Deployment is not the win. Adoption is. We need to spend more time focused on how employees are adopting the technology we give them. Look, we talked a lot about technology today, and technology is important, but I will share with you the fact is, and it's really obvious here. The fact is that we do not solve this problem. It's a three-legged stool. It's really technology, HR, and real estate. If we think about the future of work, we think about the world of hybrid work, and we think about solving the issues that are going to be faced by the Great Resignation, we can't solve that problem without these three elements being in the room at the same time. If you get anything out of that, that's what we hope you take out of this conversation. That the reality is it's not a single-threaded problem, and that partnership is the key to success. So Don, back to you.
Well, thanks, Mark. We have another question here. The question comes that it looks like a lot of these tools are designed for larger corporations. What does this mean for small to medium-sized companies?
Yeah, that is the great thing about what's going on right now. This idea that nobody will be excluded based on the size or industry you're in, right? These tools, most are being provided cloud enabled, so they're available to anybody. They're available as a service, as you see fit. And I will tell you, some of the biggest innovations that I'm seeing as I talk to clients are not in the big multinationals. They're happening in smaller companies that realize that this is an immediate need for all of them right now, right? It's all about how you assemble this. The other metaphor around this is the workplace is not going to be standard. It's going to be like a garden. You know, your garden in your backyard, you know where you get the proper sun, you know which soil is a little moister than others, you know which soil is richer. That's a workplace. We're creating and growing something from the ground up. And it doesn't matter how big the garden is, right? I think there's a solution in there for everybody at an affordable point, right? Which creates competitive advantage, which I would look back to you, right?
Yep, for sure. And I would have to say probably one of the biggest innovations in this type of technology, which is now kind of table stakes in the industry, is just, I really don't have a river in the back of my house here. I mean, having virtual backgrounds, having things like noise cancellation, so I have airplanes flying overhead and things like that, make the experience from working from home seamless. And you go back to, the corner office. I think now the big thing is going to be who's got the cutest dog at home that gets on the screen. So,
well, we have the running joke. I was on a call last night and somebody's small 4-year-old child ran up and jumped in their lap. And the running joke was, hey, your assistant showed up, right? We make jokes. This is really normalized.
Yes.
Look, the pandemic was horrid in so many ways. Nobody will never dismiss that. But the reality is we've all become a little more socially connected.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's a good thing. That drives engagement, right? I feel part of something bigger, right? I mean, there's a lot of goodness that repercussions or outcomes of this that have happened socially too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, I could tell today by by a lot of the participation from the attendees today, that this is a subject that's top of mind for a lot of companies and a lot of people. And, I'd, on behalf of Allstream and Cisco, I'd really like to thank everybody for attending. Yes, there is a recording, Sarah, of this webinar will be available. You're going to receive an email with a link to the recording, and it's also going to be on our website on allstream.com. And you're going to receive a survey on this as well to make sure that we're delivering the right content to our audience, which I think today we really were, because everyone was pretty engaged on the line. So if you'd like to learn more about these solutions, please contact Allstream at allstream.com. And I'd like to once again thank Justin and Mark for being our presenters today. We do have coming up on February 24th the last session in our three-part series of the Future of Work 360. So you will see an invitation coming to that shortly. If you would like to register for that today or get more information, once again, the QR code is right there. Just scan that, and that'll take you right to where we're going to go. And I think this next one on February 24th, that's going to be great because we're going to have a lot of discussions around operational productivity, which really kind of dovetails into some of the things that Mark was saying about, the contact center space. How do you manage contact center folks at home in this hybrid work environment? Security. We're going to be talking about security and hybrid work when it comes to customer experience. Those sorts of things, all very kind of top of mind things that dovetail into what we were talking about today. So with that, I will give everybody 9 minutes back in their day. And once again, thanks to our presenters and especially to all of you who've taken the time out of your day to listen to our presentation. And have a great day.